there's a short life in
Why do you think that is? What the creative side is?
Well, because losing out money, you got to take. You're going through so much to try and deal with life.
The algorithm. Big Boom is in the building. You know what I mean? And I know it's going to be a lot of hateration, holleration in this dancery.
When Steve Harvey's former bodyguard, William Big Boom Freeman, decided to speak out, it was as if a crack had formed in the pristine surface of one of Hollywood's most celebrated power couples. Freeman, a man who had once stood in the shadows protecting the Harveys from the prying eyes of the world, was now stepping forward with claims that could shake their carefully curated empire to its very foundation. And what he had to say wasn't just shocking, it was incendiary.
Because Big Boom don't deny it. But for Big Boom and his people to reach out to me on Instagram and say, we love what you...
Freeman's allegations centered on the idea that Sean Diddy Combs, the music mogul who has turned excess into an art form, had been involved with not just one, but two members of the Harvey family, Steve's wife, Marjorie, and her stepdaughter, Lori. To make matters worse, Freeman suggested that Steve himself knew all about it. Whether you believe Freeman's account or not, it is impossible to ignore the weight of such a claim. The very idea that a man who has built his reputation on doling out relationship advice and promoting family values might have turned a blind eye, or worse, tacitly approved, of such personal betrayals has set the public rumor mill ablaze.
Now, you know what, Steve? For my safety, I'm going to say allegedly. But if this man don't say allegedly, and he tells the truth, you can't get mad at me, Stephen.
Marjorie Harvey wasted no time in addressing the swirling storm. Turning to her Instagram account, she posted a screenshot of a blog titled, How to Handle Being Lied About, complete with a Bible verse about enduring insults without retaliation. It was a swipe at the rumor mongers, a subtle but firm declaration that she and Steve were united against the tide of speculation. In her caption, she spoke about the responsibility she felt to those who might not be as strong as she and her husband. But the question lingering in the air was whether this was a genuine attempt to rise above the noise, or a preemptive strike to divert attention from something far more damaging.
But I want to give my story out because Marjorie Harvey and Steve Harvey are denying it. And Big Boom...
Steve, for his part, responded with a mixture of exasperation and bravado during a public appearance at InvestFest in Atlanta. I'm fine. Marjorie's fine, he declared, his voice tinged with frustration. God's been good to me. I'm still shining. The comedian turned television titan seemed determined to dismiss the rumors as little more than baseless gossip, but his tone betrayed a man under pressure. For someone who has built an empire on his wit and charm, Steve's words felt more like a defense mechanism than a definitive statement of innocence. And yet, the public couldn't help but notice the cracks in the narrative. After all, this wasn't the first time the Harvey family had found themselves at the center of controversy. The whispers about Marjorie's past, the rumors of her connections to questionable figures before she married Steve, had never entirely faded away. Add to that the fact that Lori Harvey, Steve's glamorous stepdaughter, had her own history of high-profile relationships, including a rumored fling with Diddy himself, and the entire situation began to feel like a tangled web of secrets and half-truths.
Calling you big.
Yes.
Oh, wow, man, you're quite the player, dude. Like, because you listen, everybody is kind of cheering for...
And Diddy's rumored romance had been something of a public spectacle back in 2019. The pair were spotted jetting off to exotic locations, dining in Italy with Lori's parents, and even wearing coordinated outfits during a stroll through Manhattan. But what really raised eyebrows was the fact that Lori had previously been linked to Diddy's son, Justin. The optics of such a situation were messy, to say the least, and despite Lori's denials that she and Justin had ever been more than friends, the public couldn't help but draw its own conclusions. The rumored relationship between Lori and Diddy was never officially confirmed, but the speculation was enough to cast a shadow over the entire Harvey Combs dynamic.
Like I said, Steve Harvey has known for years that I've been messing with Marjorie. For years.
Wow.
And then there was Steve's curious silence during the height of the Lori Diddy drama. For a man who has made a career out of giving advice to women about how to act like a lady and think like a man, his refusal to address the situation publicly struck many as odd. Was it a case of respecting his stepdaughter's privacy? Or was there something more calculated at play? Some wondered whether Steve's silence was less about protecting Lori and more about protecting himself from any potential blowback.
Now let me tell you something. Steve knew I was having an affair with Marjorie, okay?
Steve, you saying Steve Harvey knew?
Adding another layer to the chaos were the rumors that Marjorie herself had been involved with Freeman, the very man now making these explosive allegations. According to Freeman, the relationship between him and Marjorie had been more than professional, a claim that Marjorie has vehemently denied. The timing of Freeman's revelations, coming years after he had parted ways with the Harveys, has led some to question his motives. Is this a case of a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge? Or is there a kernel of truth buried beneath the layers of denial and counter-accusations? The Harveys' relationship has always been presented as something of a fairy tale. Steve has often spoken about how Marjorie changed his life, crediting her with helping him find happiness and stability after 2 failed marriages. Their love story, complete with a serendipitous reunion orchestrated by Steve's former bodyguard, has been a cornerstone of their public image. But fairy tales, as we all know, often have a darker side.
That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Got punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man. So I believe that's a big problem with a lot of the actors out there because they get fluid. And next thing you know, once you go fluid,
What makes Freeman's allegations so compelling and so troubling is the way they intersect with the darker narratives that have long surrounded Diddy and his infamous parties. The music mogul's penchant for extravagant gatherings has been well documented, with stories of wild nights and questionable behavior frequently making their way into the tabloids. If Freeman's claims about Diddy's involvement with Marjorie and Lori are true, it raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of these relationships and the dynamics at play within the Harvey family. Even as Marjorie and Steve continue to project an image of unity, the public can't help but wonder what might be happening behind closed doors. Are they truly as unshaken as they claim, or are they engaged in a desperate battle to keep their empire from crumbling under the weight of scandal? And what of Lori, whose rising star in the fashion world has been overshadowed by the constant scrutiny of her personal life? Is she an unwitting pawn in a larger game? Or is there more to her story than meets the eye? With so many unanswered questions and so much at stake, the tension surrounding the Harveys, Diddy, and Freeman feels almost unbearable. And yet, the story seems far from over. If Freeman's allegations are just the tip of the iceberg, what other secrets might be lurking beneath the surface? What else aren't they telling us?
Look at Diddy, for instance. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at him. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at. He has videos. He has videos of the parties. Now, what I've heard, which I don't know how much of it is in mainstream media, I don't really follow the story that much, but what I've heard from friends that are attorneys, friends of mine that have represented me before, agents and so on, is there's a bidding war going on.
And just when you thought the story couldn't take a darker turn, the curtain lifts on the unsettling world that surrounds Sean Diddy Combs, a world that has been whispered about for years but is now being dragged into the light in excruciating detail. If Freeman's claims about Diddy's alleged ties to the Harvey family were explosive, they are nothing compared to the accusations now surfacing about what really went on behind the closed doors of Diddy's infamous gathering. These weren't just parties, they were something else entirely, something far more disturbing. For years, Diddy's events were the stuff of Hollywood legend. Lavish, exclusive, shrouded in secrecy. But according to mounting accounts, these gatherings weren't just about music. They were about control. Who held it, who lost it, and what it cost to stay in the room. And the price? Let's just say it wasn't paid in currency. Witnesses are now coming forward with chilling stories of what they saw or were made to do at these so-called celebrations. The word consent seems to have been optional, replaced by a toxic cocktail of power dynamics, manipulation, and fear.
To not be involved with a famous singer, to not come out, here's the price. And that they're just selling to the individuals that are in those, this is what I heard, they're selling those videos. So if you're Tommy X, and Tommy X is a big, big movie star. And he was at some of the Diddy parties. He was in one of those bedrooms with 3 other men, and he's happily married to a woman, and blah. Tommy doesn't want that video to come out.
One attendee, under the condition of anonymity, described the atmosphere as something out of a psychological thriller. You didn't just walk in and leave whenever you felt like it, they said. Once you were there, you were there. And the longer the night dragged on, the more the energy in the room shifted. It stopped feeling like a party and started feeling like an experiment. This same source claimed that Diddy had an almost omnipresent awareness of every corner of the room, as if he were orchestrating the entire scene from a distance, pulling strings no one could see. You'd look up and realize he was watching you even if you didn't know why, and that's when you started to feel like maybe you weren't as in control as you thought. But it's what happened after the parties ended, or rather, what didn't end, that has left Hollywood insiders scrambling to shield their reputations. Rumors of cameras hidden in plain sight, of footage captured without consent, have begun to surface. According to sources with knowledge of the situation, Diddy allegedly kept a digital archive of his most private events, a vault of material that could ruin careers, marriages, and public images in an instant. And here's the kicker. There are whispers that this treasure trove of secrets is now at the center of a vicious behind-the-scenes bidding war. The stakes? Astronomical. The reason? Self-preservation.
Same thing for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the interesting thing about the Epstein and the theory about Epstein is we know he filmed people for sure on that island. He has a lot of movies, a lot of films of people that are very, very powerful political figures, and entertainers, business people. So, do you really believe that Jeffrey Epstein himself? And
of course not.
Of course not.
Yeah.
The bidding war itself has reportedly spiraled into an underground spectacle, with some of Hollywood's most powerful figures allegedly maneuvering behind closed doors. Insiders describe a shadowy network of negotiations involving intermediaries, legal teams, and private investigators, all working discreetly to protect their clients' identities. The earliest rumors suggested that an enormous sum had already been offered to acquire and suppress the footage, but as more high-profile names began to surface, the stakes escalated dramatically. This conflict is no longer just about managing reputations. It has become a battle for survival, with careers, public images, and even entire legacies hanging in the balance. Those in the know claim that the lengths people are willing to go to keep these secrets buried are nothing short of extraordinary. There is also an unsettling theory that not everyone involved in this high-stakes game is attempting to suppress the footage. Some speculate that key players might be stoking the bidding war for entirely self-serving reasons, such as gaining leverage over their rivals, securing blackmail material, or even threatening to release the tapes to exact revenge. In an industry built on fragile alliances and long-standing feuds, the idea that this material could be weaponized for personal or professional gain is alarmingly plausible. The potential fallout from even a small leak could be catastrophic. Entire production companies might crumble, lucrative partnerships could dissolve overnight, and public figures who have carefully crafted their images for decades could see their reputations obliterated.
Did you ever spend time with the guy? Did you ever meet Diddy?
I've met him before, yeah.
How was he?
Very nice guy, very smart, super business. He's very successful.
What makes this situation even more ominous is the possibility that the bidding war itself might be a futile effort. Whispers within the industry suggest that duplicates of the footage exist, stashed away by third parties who are biding their time for the perfect moment or price. Those familiar with these kinds of high-risk scandals warn that the illusion of control is just that, an illusion. Attempts to buy and bury the evidence might only embolden others who hold copies to step forward. For those involved, the thought of never being able to truly contain the damage is a nightmare that looms large, a persistent shadow over their every move. Adding yet another layer of intrigue, rumors have begun to circulate that some of the footage may have already changed hands in smaller, private deals. These transactions, conducted off the radar, could mean that fragments of the material are already in circulation, potentially in the possession of people with their own dangerous agendas. The fear of targeted leaks, whether to exact revenge, ruin a competitor, or simply cause chaos, is now a constant threat for those implicated. In a world driven by secrecy and power, even the smallest slip could set off a chain reaction that no one can control.
I'll tell you, I don't know how much, I don't like to say things that I know unless I see it. That there's a little difference, but was it discussed? Was there descriptions from people I know that were at those? Yes, but here's another thing. So how many of these big entertainment parties and over the years and everything with as successful as you are, have you been around? Does anyone ever come up to you at a certain hour and say, okay, it's time to go? At those parties, they did.
The idea of these recordings existing has sent shockwaves through the industry. Attorneys, publicists, and agents are reportedly working overtime to determine whether their clients' names or faces could be tied to any of the alleged footage. One high-profile legal representative, speaking off the record, hinted at the level of panic among Hollywood elites. If even a fraction of what's being rumored is true, it's not just careers on the line, it's entire legacies. People are terrified, and they have every reason to be. And then there's the question of Justin Bieber, yes, Justin, whose squeaky clean boy next door image has been meticulously crafted over the years. His name has been dragged into the fray thanks to resurfaced footage of his interactions with Diddy during his teenage years. In one particularly unsettling clip, Bieber is seen joking about spending time with Diddy, only for the music mogul to make a cryptic remark about keeping certain things private. The video, once dismissed as nothing more than awkward banter, now feels loaded with implications that fans and critics alike are dissecting frame by frame.
It was just an escape for me. I was just young, like everybody in the industry and people in the world who experiment and do.
Bieber, who has largely stayed out of the spotlight in recent years, has yet to comment publicly on the allegations surrounding Diddy, but insiders say he is deeply aware of the situation and deeply uncomfortable. Justin's team is in damage control mode, one source claimed. They're combing through everything, every interaction he's ever had with Diddy, trying to figure out how this could blow back on him. He's worried, and he should be. And Bieber isn't the only one. The ripple effect of this scandal is touching everyone who ever stepped foot into one of Diddy's events, whether they were there willingly or just caught up in the orbit of his larger-than-life persona. Celebrities who once bragged about their invitations are now nervously scrubbing their social media accounts, deleting photos, and distancing themselves from the man they once called a visionary. But distancing themselves might not be enough. If the rumors about Diddy's alleged archive are true, the footage could implicate some of the biggest names in the industry, not just as passive attendees, but as active participants. And that's where things get even murkier, because if these tapes exist, and if they're as damning as insiders suggest, the question isn't just who was there, it's who knew, who allowed it, and who benefited from staying silent.
It's getting hot. Yeah, it absolutely is. Another layer to this story, Anne-Marie. A federal investigation into Combs has been ongoing, but he has not been charged with a crime.
The legal implications are staggering. Diddy is already facing an avalanche of lawsuits, each more damning than the last, but the potential fallout extends far beyond him. If other high-profile figures are dragged into the legal battle, we could be looking at one of the biggest scandals in entertainment history, one that could reshape how Hollywood does damage control. And let's not forget the financial toll. Brands and sponsors are already pulling back from anyone even remotely connected to the allegations. The message is clear. Guilt by association is enough to ruin you. And yet, for all the chaos unfolding in courtrooms and boardrooms, the human cost is perhaps the hardest to ignore. The alleged victims, whose voices are only just beginning to emerge, are finally being heard after years of whispers and denials. Their stories are raw, painful, and impossible to dismiss. Each new account adds another layer to the growing sense of unease surrounding Diddy's empire. And each one raises the same haunting question: how did this go on for so long without anyone stepping in? As the walls close in, one thing is certain. This isn't just about Sean Combs. This is about an industry that thrives on silence, on looking the other way, on protecting its own at all costs. And now, that silence is breaking. Piece by piece, story by story, the facade is crumbling. The question is, how many careers and lives will be buried in the rubble? But what do you think? Is this just the beginning of Hollywood's reckoning? Or have we barely scratched the surface? And who else might be caught in this web of secrets before it's all over? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and trust us, you're going to want to keep following this one. Until next time.